Hearthstone Grandmasters for playoffs continues here at week number 8 of Season 2. My name is Frodan. I'm joined by Sottle. And one thing that I noticed in the opening of the show as we get ready for the next coming match, which is the winner's bracket of Hunterace versus SilverName, is that no one said today's fact of the day, Sottle. It is October 11th, 2019. And on this day in history, in 1975, Saturday Night Live first debuted on NBC, which is fun because we are in an NBC studio here in Burbank Studios. We're debuted with George Carlin and guests Janice Ian, Andy Kaufman, and Billy Preston. So going on for 44 years strong and going to year 45 soon.
Wow. I feel like I was kind of damned if I did and damned if I didn't at that point, because if I did that, you'd then come on and call me out for stealing your thunder. So I don't know what you want me to do in that situation.
And my time in the FGC, I've learned option selects in broadcasts as well.
Gotta love a good OS.
There you go. So coming up next, as we mentioned, is Hunterace going up against SilverName, who I wasn't sure about his lineup going into this weekend. Zoo Warlock is a big question mark for me, Sottle. And now that we saw SilverName's lineup play out, are we feeling better that he's going against the grain here?
One game sample size, I'm not going to draw any conclusions from it. I was also skeptical about Zoo coming into this. I just talked with Abar before we went to the break about how it feels underwhelming to say, here's my new card, Imp Gang Boss, and then your opponent goes, okay, great, here's my new card, Desert Hair Evolve. You know, like it doesn't quite feel like that's lining up favorably for the Zoo. But I will say that SilverName has consistently, for 2 seasons, thought outside of the box and brought decks that were against the grain. In Season 1, that did not work out for him. In Season 2, it absolutely did. I think if there was an award for most improved in European Grandmasters, it would go to SilverName. He's really had a fantastic season in Season 2, so I don't want to rag on him too hard.
Yeah, in Season 1, it felt like he had this weird pact or bet with someone of how many times you can bring Mech Hunter and not win. He was like single-handedly contributing half of Mech Hunter's abysmal stats, but it had like a 0% win record until finally someone in Asia Pacific got like a single win with it.
Yes.
And then, of course, SilverName started pivoting, but by then the season had already been lost. But yes, as we have seen, Combo Priest, Zoo Warlock, and Quest Shaman available to SilverName, with the Druid being banned. Malagos Druid getting a pretty big, significant buff through Emperor Thorsten making a comeback, which I'm sure Sottle and Abar have discussed at length already. Hunterace, with his Priest being banned, that's not a surprise. I think most people have come to agree that Priest is still very strong in this metagame because Northshire Cleric and Nephthite Ritualist and Ninja Tolvir hasn't gone anywhere.
No, they have not. But this is where the players' practice groups and test groups are really going to come into play. Because we know from previous experience, when a big tournament like this happens so close to a shake-up of the metagame, be it an expansion, be it an adventure, be it a special event as we have here, the practice groups really go into overdrive in terms of trying to find that one deck, that one card that no one is thinking about in the right way. We saw it with Corridor Creeper, of course, famously, previously bringing enormous success to the players that were onto that very, very early. But Priest in particular is not a deck that you're going to be testing against too much on ladder right now. You can get a lot of useful data from a lot of games very quickly by just jamming decks on ladder, playing various popular matchups. There aren't too many people playing Combo Priest on ladder right now. That's not to say it's not still a powerful deck. It's just it's not the new thing. It's not exciting to people, so it's not what they're choosing to do with their time. But these guys, as professional competitors, needed to keep testing that deck and have come quite rightly to the conclusion that it is still one of the best decks in the game.
Yep. And, very interestingly enough, Shaman being one of the most popular classes this weekend alongside Priest. In fact, Shaman, I believe, is number 2. One of the few people not bringing Shaman. All of today, in fact, we're going to see every other lineup have Shaman except for SilverName. So let's see if this ends up working out. Token Shaman, Aggressive Shaman, Overload Shaman, John Bray Shaman, however you want to kind of label this Evolve package with Desert Hair and Evolve itself is really interesting.
I did label this, and I called it Token Shaman, Dan, so that's what we're calling it.
Sure.
Interesting that Hunterace is specifically going with this version of the deck when most other European players have gone with the quest variation. The difference here, as you see there in the key cards, both versions of the deck rely heavily on that Desert Hare and Evolve to just pick them up some free win rate in a lot of matchups where they can just blow the game out with that. Quest Shaman has the added option of being able to double up on the Desert Hares later and have an even bigger board, but that deck that Hunterace is playing relies much more heavily on cards like Bloodlust to leverage how quickly they can just build a board of 5, 6, 7 minions every single turn.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be tough for Hunterace to win back the board, but if he does, it is going to be a big threat. We've seen this deck a couple of times in the previous week of Grandmasters for Americas, where Monsanto brought something very similar, even before the Evolve package made its way into the current aggro token builds. And was really effective because it just got there every single time with Bloodlust and the board just being big enough to get those exacties damage. So we'll see if Hunterace can carry that momentum because he is dissenting from the more popular Quest Shaman, which is currently being played more than Evolve Shaman on ladder, but we'll see if this ends up being the right call.
Yeah, that Thunderhead pickup for Hunterace has now given him a lot of very complex options this turn, because it seemed like a fairly straightforward choice to kill the Light Warden. But the question remains of how you want to kill it. You can use the Lightning Bolt here, which is more damage used. He uses a 3 damage spell to take care of a 2 damage minion, but it is much more mana efficient. And I think that is important with the coming turns, when especially after he drew that Thunderhead. So he now has Thunderhead and Zap available to him, even if he spends the coin before that point.
Right, so I think a lot of people who see both hands, they'll be confused. You know, why use Zap over the Lightning Bolt or Lightning Bolt over the Zap, vice versa? And it's exactly what you're describing, which is the Thunderhead swing is the most important turn for Hunterace, especially because it double dips with Thunderhead and things like Voltaic Bursts. So if you're able to bide your time, get things like the Mogu Flesh Shaper. I mean, it's the second Lightning Bolt, which is really big. But it's still before the Thunderhead comes out.
It is, but it gives him the option now, if he wants to take this line, of just passing this turn and then going Thunderhead, Zap, Coin, Bolt on the following turn. But I think he will probably, you know, sight unseen, not seeing his opponent's hand, be giving a lot of respect to Nephicet Ritualist in this spot.
Shall we make a storm?
Yeah, the Ritualist is super scary. And even if they did have the Ritualist, Thunderhead's still going to survive, so chances are he's still going to be able to capitalize a little bit. But yeah, the Psychopomp, putting a 2/6 in the way, very annoying for Hunterace to deal with, assuming SilverName doesn't see a better play here, which is, I think, the kill the Thunderhead straight up.
Yeah, the Psychopomp does still have that failure rate of the Light Warden that he played on turn 1, which could be potentially devastating for him if it involves leaving the Thunderhead up. And so it does seem like a big responsible play for him. This demands that his Blade Master get taken care of, which can then increase his Psychopomp odds. He also gives himself the opportunity to just play the Armet into Psychopomp curve if this turn goes well for him as well, which is obviously insane.
Yeah, and I mean, this amount of overload that's not being converted into sparks is massive, because now SilverName, card for card, seems to have higher quality than what Hunterace is doing. And this Ahmed into the beaming sidekick. Just a lot of stats that's going to be hard to remove. Oh boy.
Okay. We haven't seen it happen yet. We got through an entire series without the terror of ladder, these 3 adorable bunny rabbits getting over the line, and it might still just be a little bit late for Hunterace in this position, but it's the best he's got, I think.
Well,
that ain't it.
It's not great. Not a lot of big stats. I mean, 4 mana generally has taken a pretty big quality of hit in terms of their normal stat line, but this Psychopomp, especially if it revives a taunt, it does not, which, even though it might look better for SilverName, it might actually end up being okay for Hunterace if he ends up being able to utilize Bloodlust and help get past things more efficiently, but I don't know if that's the case here if SilverName takes the trades.
Right. I think trading is likely the responsible thing to do here in SilverName's position.
Right, and I think in my mind, I'm looking at what Hunterace can really draw to get out of this spot here. Considering that there are 3 beasts on the field and 1 scavenger hyena, this is actually kind of funny, by the way. Both Scale Worm and Night Prowler are beasts.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay.
So in a very interesting way, SilverName has to respect his board because it is threatening.
Yeah, I guess that hyena just absolutely has to die then. I think the position for Hunterace here really calls for something that is not in his deck, which means Sludge Slurper into Ethereal Lackey would be like my #1 hope this turn if I was in Hunterace's position.
Sure. Bloodlust does help Hunterace chew through at least the Ahmet, what looks like. And that's kind of a big deal to stop SilverName from making this game absolutely unwinnable.
That is huge, actually, yeah. And then he can even use the Mutate after the fact to upgrade whichever damaged minion he chooses to trade into the 2/6. I guess the Scale Worm goes into the 2/6. Actually, no, you can use the Arena Treasure Chest and then upgrade that instead. No, that doesn't work, and then killing the armor.
Right, and I'm kind of wondering if Hunterace actually wants to hold on to the Treasure Chest. His opponent's out of cards and effectively feels like he's all in.
Sure.
And he already used an Inner Fire. So it's a pretty interesting spot. And I think if Hunterace, I would probably consider evolving the Night Prowler because it's the weakest stats. It gets traded into by just the beaming sidekick.
Sure.
But there is merit to holding on to the Mutate as well. Because he has Spear of the Frog. Alright. Crusader? Or Dalaran Crusader, excuse me.
We take those. There is a 1/5 on the board.
Yeah, there's their Ritualist though. Hunterace does not have a way to activate Vicina right now.
Yes, he needs an Overload card right now.
Oh, this is funny.
He needs an Overload card right now so he can get some attack onto that Arena Treasure Chest and draw some cards, and that is exactly what he finds here.
Perfect mana expenditure too, based off what we see currently.
As long as SilverName continues in this game without Bonsamdi and without a Northshire Cleric, Hunterace will feel like he has a chance.
Well, so here's the thing. 2 Lightning Bolts are drawn, which means that Hunterace is going to pick up either Evolve or Voltaic Bursts. If he plays Voltaic Burst, he gets Soul of the Murloc. That makes him overloaded, which means Vicina next turn, with Soul of the Murloc and Voltaic Burst being played, would have a pretty significant impact.
Okay.
And that just starts to chain, right? Because then you draw deeper into your deck, which means you're likely to get another Desert Hare or another Bloodlust or anything else like Sea Giant to help swing the board.
Sure. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It definitely starts to make some sense. I was very tunneled on the idea of just using Vicina immediately and drawing the cards. 2-turn setup certainly does sound powerful the way you describe it.
Doesn't have gained the Voltaic Burst.
Draws the Sludge Slurper as well now, and that is
Thunderhead.
Huge air for SilverName. That is nothing. He gets to remove the the Overload buff opportunity from Vicina if he wants to, which would maybe entitle him to start pushing face. But really, that is about as low impact a draw as he could have had on this turn.
Yeah, and I think it looks like Hunterace just wants to soften up the board a lot more by playing the Vicina. Not optimistic if he whiffs, right? If he got the Evolve, this entire plan would break apart that I was describing. He's accounting for the worst possible scenario. But instead, looks like he might be in a position to actually swing this board soon. Yeah.
He overloads twice this turn already and picks up a Lackey.
Yeah, that
all of which
Voltaic
will be
Burst.
playable.
Thunderhead's going to generate 6 elementals this turn, on top of whatever he's able to get from the Sludge Slurper. Also, I forgot about, again, the Soul of the Murloc, which might even be better than the Sludge Slurper in this spot.
Sure. Yeah, I like this ordering. Let's see what the Voltaic Burst draws first. There is the Soul.
That's a lot of stats. It's an extra 6/6 on the board. SilverName. Making a little gesture here, just of course, unhappy to see what's going on. And now Hunterace has to consider, what if SilverName draws the exact nuts, which is Divine Spirit Interfire.
Oh, that is not the exact nuts, but it's somewhere close for SilverName. But now, with Bloodlust in hand for Hunterace, has he turned the corner to just being the aggressor here?
It looks like with Bloodlust in hand, I mean, SilverName can't stop this board. But he can stop the damage coming through.
Yeah. Currently only 25 damage with Bloodlust, I believe.
From what we see as well.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on board plus 18. Yeah.
Consider.
SilverName can't draw or even benefit off of these 1-mana minions. At least not yet.
Right.
So in this spot here, SilverName, you also have to consider pushing face damage straight up. Because, you know, it's one of those things where if you are alive to a Bloodlust, is it perhaps just better, instead of wasting the 7 damage, to just try and push for lethal?
That frog is incredibly scary, though. I do respect that decision from SilverName.
It's just the spirit of the frog, not even the frog itself.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that scarier?
Yeah, depends who you ask. I wonder if Hunterace is going to use his Bloods to clear. It would be a second one.
I think so.
And I think there's just so much power on the board, it's you have to respect it. Plus he has Sea Giant, right? So
Yes.
Sea Giant can clear that.
Sludge Slurper, Sea Giant, Bloodlust to clear, and then you can even Kobold Lackey at the end of the turn there, just for board space considerations. I guess it doesn't make a difference. You can play the Kobold Lackey, trade off a space. Sea Giant still costs 1.
Yes, Kobold Lackey, Bloodlust will still make these 1 attack 4, which allows him to trade very evenly with pretty much whatever he chooses.
There is little time.
Divine Spirit is not it.
Well, he does get 2 draws.
Yep.
And Hunterace knew that 1 minion is going to survive no matter how he picks up the trades. He thought really hard if he had a way to clear the board. I don't think he did.
Nope, I agree. It looked about the best he could have done. He could have chosen to cut some health into this Blade Master to play around these kind of scenarios. And he does allocate mana to this Light Warden first before drawing the cards, which is interesting to me.
Yep. No extra heals. SilverName was looking for perhaps the miracle out of the second Divine Spirit, which would have ended this game if he picked up a way to convert off of it.
Yeah, and if he didn't find that, then Circle of Healing, Powered Shield, and a Pyromancer. Like, there were lots of ways that he could have had an impact this turn that took care of some of the board state and re-established him as the aggressor in the matchup.
And now, Hunterace doesn't have that much going for him in terms of the game-ending damage anymore because he has no Bloodlust, but this Evolve is very interesting to look at right now. There's a lot of ways that you could go about this turn.
Yeah, the unfortunate part for Hunterace is that almost all of his minions have 1 health, and these clerics, like, almost certainly have to be killed from Hunterace before anything else happens, which then cuts into his evolve value because minions have to die to trade off these clerics.
Do lose a couple of 2-mana minions, but you do gain at least one of them back through your hero power. Hunterace should at least push 1 damage. Okay, gets a couple of rushers.
Totem's last as well. 25% chance for the Taunt Totem there is an enormous deal for him.
Right. He's accounting for the possibility of heal plus more arms plus inner fire or a topsy-turvy, which would be a 16. Hunterace can trade yet again. Down to 10 to cut out perhaps Power Word Shield out, which would have been potentially it, actually.
SilverName's deck not cooperating with him right now. Yeah, I think the Taunt Totem there was a smart call from Hunterace, not only because it potentially protected himself from lethal, it also just protected his Sea Giant from being traded off the board as well. Like, if SilverName wanted to do that, the Taunt Totem cut that off. Also, unfortunate outcome, he rolls a 1-1 off his 5-drop,
I was about to comment on that.
Yeah.
I was trying to imagine why Hunterace was pretty unhappy with his play, given that it was the best play that he had available to him. But I realized the 1-1 hotshot.
Speak to me.
Way to upgrade, right? Yeah. Turn from a Thunderhead down to a 1-1-3-2. And of course, because there's no more Snow Fury Giant, there's no 11-mana minion, Sea Giant isn't involved in it. So a lot of people who propose nerfing or buffing Graveheart to 11 mana would have actually buffed Evolve Shaman in the coming months.
Okay.
People were like, oh yeah, just turn Graveheart to 11. The only can do is logical, which is put a Graveheart at 13, I believe. Okay, hold on. Yep. Miracle outs.
Ethereal Lackey. Ethereal Lackey.
Oh, a Stormbringer would be absolutely insane. Earthshock.
Earthshock is still kind of exciting here.
Earthen Might, is there any way to capitalize on that? The most damage right now is actually Totemic Smash.
Yes, that is very fair.
Earthen Might's interesting because it does actually buff his Red Man Wasp as well, but you know, it does help him get past this.
Wait, what happened?
He was trying to hope for a Taunt Totem, I think.
Okay. Because I'm curious, like, what get? Yeah, I was gonna say, do you just Earthshock the Acolyte here instead of the Blade Master?
6/4? I think so. He's afraid of basically having this get too much value and crushing the game.
Right. Enrage this Wasp. Push the 2.
Oh, he gets the heal and he doesn't get to buff anymore, the Wetman Wasp.
Right. Yes, that certainly explains the face from Hunterace on the previous turn.
Ouch. This stings. I'm looking for more outs here from Hunterace's deck.
I think he's almost out of them. He's played both Sludge Slurpers. He's played both Bloodlusts. He does not play a natural copy of Stormbringer in the deck.
It might be too late for him to even get another Sea Giant. I think SilverName could just legitimately push face here.
Right.
And Hunterace can't do anything about it.
Agreed. And yeah, obviously we're a little slow on the uptake, but that healing totem rolling to remove the Enrage from that Red Band Wasp is huge because Hunterace now just has so much less clearing power this turn. And you can see the look of emotion on Hunterace's face, or you would be able to if he wasn't entirely covering it right now. There it is. He has not had a good time in game number 1.
No, but there is a chance he could still get a Taunt Totem, but I don't think it'll protect him. I think this might look like a game 1 victory for SilverName, who's keeping his momentum from the first series.
Yep. There's just 5 Blade Masters on this board. Like, what happened this game?
Yeah. Part of me does think if still like reevaluating that Vicina Spear of the Frog play and wondering how much more could have been perhaps gained if he was able to stick that board and then layer Vicina and Bloodlust, because he had to commit Vicina to the board.
Yeah.
And then use Bloodlust afterwards retroactively.
Yeah. I will admit I was definitely tunneled into the camp of the play that Hunterace ended up making. But when you outlined the world that you described, which is worth saying, like, you described a particular line of spell draws from the Spirit of the Frog that can give you a really good outcome. There were other options he could have found, but I will certainly admit that when you described that line, I did certainly become very interested in it. But it's not to say that Hunterace will not have seen that play. He certainly would have considered that option and just considered that he was still in a reasonable position with the controllable play, right? Like the consistent play that gives him the same outcome every time. I think Hunterace will have calculated that he feels comfortable in that position. It's something that he does sometimes overtly and sometimes just by instinct, where he has this natural understanding at such a high level of what game states look like evolving over time. But that doesn't make him immune to criticism. I think that's certainly a good point to look at.
I mean, it comes down to, the game state, in which, in that case, 2 out of the 3 times when you zap, you're going to get a Voltaic Burst, and then 1 of those 3 times you're going to get an Evolve. And I think if you evaluate your position, say, I think I'm going to win more percentage of the time if I play Vicina, which is, like, say it's 70, 75% of the time.
Right.
Then that's just, a good line to take for Hunterace. But, you don't want to give your opponent a chance to win the game simply because you whiffed. And I think Hunterace evaluated and said, I'm going to get card draw. He's out of cards. He's effectively all in. I feel like I'm in a good enough spot. So, again, I think that that line of reasoning makes sense. And we'll see if Hunterace can climb back. I personally believe that Priest is still a very powerful deck.
Yes.
Even though people are like, oh, Priest should beat Shaman all the time, and everyone's thinking that the Shaman deck's pretty good, I have a hard time believing why this Shaman's favored personally for me. I think Mansano even commented on it. The more he practiced it after submitting last week, he realized it was a lot more close. He said in his initial testing, he thought the Shaman was very favored. And they said as he played more and more and realized the Priest player was like learning the matchup and being technical about it, it became a lot closer to 50-50.
Specifically referring to the token shaman as well? Wow, okay, that's really interesting. Like, I could definitely get on board with that argument with the quest variation of the deck, but I do personally believe that shaman is favored in that matchup, but that is very, very interesting to hear. While we are on the subject, you just saw a brief look at 2 decks that are including 2 of the new cards that have come back in with the special event that is currently running in Hearthstone. If you have not logged in a while, feel free to do so, and you will be surprised with 23 cards from the history of Hearthstone that will be gifted to you for free for the duration of this event. Imgang Boss being one of them, as you see here in SilverName Zoo, and Emperor Thorasan that just went past in Hunterace's Paladin, which, if you're not familiar with Emperor, it discounts every card in your hand by 1 mana at the end of each turn. So that means in Holy Wrath Paladin, a deck that has an expensive combo that is able to do 25 damage to the opponent in a single turn, they can do that twice in a single turn, which means the deck is now capable of 50 damage in a single turn.
It's very scary. Emperor Thorasan was a terror in a lot of mid-range and combo decks, largely because Emperor was so powerful to discount your hand and get a lot of tempo if you need to pressure your opponent at the game. This was highlighted by Druid sometimes playing Emperor turn 1 when they innervated twice with a coin and then discounted their 2-card hand. But then you thought that was a bad play, but you realize there's a 5/5.
They just played a 5/5.
And then you're like, oh, I die.
Yeah, and then the next turn they draw a card, and a lot of the time that card is like Druid of the Claw or Ancient of Lore or something. Like, yeah, it adds up quickly.
Yeah. So now Zoo Warlock, speaking of like old decks, with Imp Gang Boss, surprisingly still very effective, right? You don't really consider Imp Gang Boss to be a natural threat, but because it's a token-based metagame, and people are trying to play Sea Giants, well, why not just play more Sea Giant type decks, right? Yell at the board, really pressure your opponent. The thing that really helps it come together is Grim Rally. That's something that never had a connection historically with Imp Gang Boss. Right. It rotated out way before Grim Rally came into play. So I wonder how that's going to factor into the effectiveness of Zoo this weekend.
Yeah, I was about to make that exact point that, back in the day, Imp Gang Boss was considered one of the strongest early game cards in the entire game. And I think if players had Grim Rally available to them at that point as well, it could have been even more oppressive, because the ability to make huge wide board states is very, very high now with this build of Zoo. As mentioned, we do have questions about Zoo being brought here, just in terms of the power level of what it does compared to some of the other decks. But SilverName did have immediate success in it with his first series over Bunny Hopper. If he can now follow that up with a quick 2-0 with his Zoo, you certainly have to start giving him some credit for this choice.
Speaking of old memories, Knife Juggler just not hitting any minions, always going face. What do you mean, man? I'm just throwing my knives.
This is every game of Hearthstone I played for 18 months or so. Play an Imp Gang Boss next to a Knife Juggler, knife goes face, have to trade anyway, feels bad. SilverName does want to trade there in that situation, by the way, because the threat of just equality coming down that turn, and for Hunterace just be able to take care of some minions, is something that I think he would be very interested in if SilverName left 2 minions alive there.
Yep. This Voidwalker doing some work. Pulling in 5 damage. Hunterace preemptively trading as well to make sure that in-game boss does not summon an extra 1/1.
Absolutely.
Crystallizer is very good for the next turn when SilverName can utilize it with Crystallizer.
Get in there!
Did I just say Crystallizer twice?
You did, yes.
Sorry. Disease Vulture will be great next turn when you can use it with Disease Vulture.
And that's a lot of early game damage being pushed through here. 12 already on turn 4. This Knife Juggler has carried a lot of that damage. As you said, it has thrown Knife's face, but that's honestly not necessarily a bad scenario in this matchup.
Yes. Oh. I do like this Holy Wrath. I think it's important for Hunterace to cut down on the damage.
Yep. No failure rate, of course, because of that trade that he made last turn. The trade last turn, I think, was much more about, as you said, not letting in-game boss summon tokens, but it did have that upside of just taking away the Crystology whiff on the Holy Wrath on the Knife Juggler.
Yeah. Now, SilverName does start to think about the amount he wants to extend onto the board. Starting from turn 6 onwards, you start to activate Wild Pyromancer and Equality.
Yep.
So if SilverName, goes Crystallizer, Disease Vulture, that's a great board. But is it, too much of a commitment versus he could start life tapping and weave in other damage? And that's the equation he has to balance here.
I like doing it. I'm trying to avoid having caster vision here, which is very hard in this situation because, of course, I can see that the clear is not available for Hunterace. But you can see Hunterace's reaction to the play being made. I think as Zoo here, you should be all-inning your opponent on as many turns as you possibly can. I think this is a very make-them-have-it matchup. If you continue to play around all the removal, you give them credit for having those cards. You essentially heal them for having those cards even when they don't have them if you play around it too much in that situation.
Agreed. Speaking of old cards trying to make a comeback, Warsong Commander's like, I heard everyone's coming back. Standard.
Yo, is it my time again? Did they bring back Patron? No? All right, later.
Gosh. Actually, I do kind of wonder if Warsong Commander got changed to have your rush minions have +1 attack. Would that actually be better, given how much rush minions are in the meta versus charge minions?
It got changed to when you play the card Charge, your rush minion has +1 attack.
God. It's funny to me, right? How you effectively could make the card better by what many perceive to be a nerf.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It's very amusing to me. Hunterace, with the investment of Equality now, recognizes he won't die to damage on board, short of a Leroy Jenkins coming out of nowhere. Even then, 11 power on board, 6 with the Leroy.
This is a yikes, and that Shivala still costing 13 currently.
Right.
Is a long way away from coming anywhere near this board. Desert Hare actually doing Hunterace a favor here and enabling the full clear with the Consecration on the following turn.
Yes. SilverName picks up an opportunity to have Cobalt Lackey with damage from the hand, which is fairly powerful. Zoo does lack that damage, so you can really capitalize with some cool plays. With like Cobalt Lackey and Leroy Jenkins, maybe you Cobalt Lackey played Leroy, then Grim routed Cobalt Lackey, things like that.
Oh, that Crystal Smith Kangor is potentially huge here.
Yes. And now Hunterace can clear the board with a Consecration. First draw.
Kangor's not coming into play this turn. He wants to wait to have it specifically line up with that Shivala to lock out the game, I guess is his thinking here.
There is a copy of... there are 2 copies of Magic Carpet, so I think in an effort to perhaps prevent him from having any way to kill the Crystal Smith Kangor.
Sure. I really like the Kangor coming down.
I like it too. I'm trying to think about reasons not to.
Yes.
That's not a very good reason.
Oh,
Leroy Jenkins
Leroy
and Cobalt
Lackey for SilverName. Hunterace's losing streak will unfortunately continue, but you see what it means to SilverName. He has been very stoic throughout the majority of that series and throughout the majority of his first series as well. But that Leroy draw, he absolutely could not contain his excitement, and who could blame him? That draw changed everything, because I think that Kangor coming into play, it's why I liked it so much. Even without Shivala being playable, I think it cost 9 and he had 8 mana on the following turn, so it wasn't a playable option. But just with it in play, like that's the freedom of I will just take a couple of extra points this turn, okay? Take a couple of extra points next turn. I'll use that buffer to just spend my mana on drawing cards and doing more powerful things. I think there was a very, very real chance that game was about to turn the corner in Hunterace's favor, and that Leroy draw was everything to SilverName, as you saw from the reaction that he gave.
Which is pretty fitting, right? All these wild cards coming back and giving us a retro throwback to how Hearthstone used to be. How iconic is it for a Zoo Warlock to get Leroy Jenkins off the top and some kind of damage, Soulfire, in this case Cobalt Lackey, with Knife Juggler missing minion damage for so many times and getting the extra damage to face. Fun things like that is what makes Zoo Warlock really rewarding when you can get that damage that you need to end the game. And, of course, I think it's doubly fitting for SilverName, the fact that this is considered to be a risky deck to bring to the tournament. He's able to get the wins with it. I think he's a well-deserved and earned spot for the semifinals.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 points to make. Firstly, I think if you were playing, personally, my opinion, if you were playing Leroy Jenkins in your deck last time Imp Gang Boss and Emperor Thaurissan was around, then you were an uncultured savage. But aside from that, I do think the Zoo was a risky bring, as you say, and certainly scoreboard 2-0 right now for Zoo. We have to give credit for SilverName for that. I'm still not fully convinced. I think he's had almost ideal draws in both games that he's had. He had Imp Gang Boss into 2 Voidwalkers to protect it in the matchup against Shaman, which is absolutely ideal. And he had an extremely aggressive, high damage hand with Knife Juggler and Imp Gang Boss, and then the Leroy draw at the last moment. So there is still a ways to go for SilverName at this point. So remains to be seen for me if Zoo can continue to carry him through this.
All right, well, with that, we're going to take a break. Our second one, we're going to have Abar hop back onto the desk, and then we'll have the first playoff appearance by 4th seed Pavel joining us. What's going to happen? Pavel versus Bunny Hopper. We'll find out after the jump. Stay tuned.